Good day, friends, and welcome to Marriage Encounter. With me, Dr. Greene, is Dr. Mark Braithwaite, and together we are going to be guiding you through this program. Marriage Encounter is not a new program. We have been on Second Advent for many years. We are now premiering on SLC Adventist, and we're delighted to come your way today. We want to encourage you to tell your friends, your neighbors, your loved ones, your co-workers that Marriage Encounter is on. Many of you have met us in the supermarkets, in the banks, etc. And when you hear our voices, you say, oh, that's the face. Now you can see the faces. And we are just delighted to be with you today. Well, before we go any further, we want to have a word of prayer. Dr. Braithwaite?
Let's pray, everybody. Father God, we are so thankful for another day and the opportunity to share on Marriage Encounter. As we share today on the SLC Adventist YouTube channel, we are grateful for those who will be following. God, we just pray that the sessions will be meaningful. They will bless couples, and marriages will be blessed. And ultimately, God, we will see just a beautiful improvement in the journey of some couples. So bless us today. Be with Dr. Greene and myself as we share, and may we celebrate this moment in Jesus' name.
Amen.
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 Of course, we don't want the folks who are listening on Second Advent to be jealous. We welcome you just the same.
Yeah.
Today we start a new series. We are looking, Dr. Braithwaite, at the whole concept of boundaries in marriages.
Yeah.
And this is very important. I remember that you and I were attending a wedding not very long ago. And it was an observation that you made that got me thinking. You know, as the couple at the reception, as they were there, they were looking into each other's faces and they were smiling and they looked so much at ease. I remember you whispering to me, you know, just to watch this couple, you know, how much in love they are, how excited they are, how committed they seem to one another. And what a pity if some years down the road, you know, things fall apart.
That's
and
right.
How could that be?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you know, throughout the experience of our lives, doing premarital counseling and engaging and helping couples to develop and grow, we've seen this reality where individuals, they stand before the altar, they're so in love, they do their, you know, marriage ceremony, and everybody looks so excited. And a few years later, that same couple, you know, may come to you and they don't even seem to want to be in the same room together. So, you know, that's one of the realities and one of the challenges as we navigate the journey here on Marriage Encounter to help people to grow in love for many, many years to come.
And you know, our desire is that all marriages remain couples that is, remain fully committed, fully devoted. And that spark that you see in the newlyweds, we want to see that spark in every relationship. So you have tuned in to the right place, Marriage Encounter. As I said, today we are going to be talking about boundaries in marriage. Now, the whole idea of how a marriage could move from a couple being so much in love to the place where they really don't want to see one another again is an interesting process.
Yes.
For some couples, it takes years to get there. For others, as a matter, I've known of a few couples who, after 6 months, they are not interested in each other again.
That's the reality.
That's the reality. Yeah. So a part of what we're going to be talking about, Dr. Braithwaite, is how we can avoid this.
That's right.
Not so?
That's right. That's exactly right. And, you know, it's a journey. We often say that marriage is a journey where two people ought to grow together, to grow in love, to develop skills so that they can improve their relationship from day to day. And that's what it's all about. You know, we know that persons will not get it right immediately, but as time goes by and as they apply themselves and as they develop skills, we believe that couples can do extremely well.
Well, couples generally start in love. I believe that every couple who makes that commitment in marriage intends to do so until death do us part, as the vow says. And so, you know, you hear people say all the time, oh, we're in love, we're going to make it. Sometimes couples come into my office for premarital counseling and I ask them, how do you know that this is the person for you? And the response is, Pastor, we're in love. You know, love is important. But is love everything?
Well, you know, people may think, and it's a nice thing to say, you know, love is everything. But the reality is that along with love, people need skills, Dr. Greene. They need skills to help them to navigate through the journey. Love, you know, as we know from 1 Corinthians 13, is a principle that is established. And there are lots of, you know, solid, important principles that love espouses. But beyond that, you know, people need to have skills in order to navigate the journey. For example, you know, the truth is that, you know, in a marriage, you know, the bills are just not going to pay themselves. Somebody has to determine how we're going to go about this. And so there needs to be the skill in terms of managing or money management. That skill is necessary and appropriate in a relationship. So love is important, yes, but, you know, when you get home and the electricity is off and you say to your spouse, I love you, that doesn't pay the bill.
So in addition, Dr. Braithwaite, to being in love, and that feeling of affection is definitely an important feeling to have.
Exceptional, yes.
But
yes.
you're saying that individuals must be willing to develop their skills and to grow their knowledge. And the concept that we're introducing in this new series, this concept of boundaries, is probably for some individuals one area where you are going to need to grow your knowledge in this area.
Right.
Now, Doc, the whole matter of boundaries to marriage, you know, when I hear of boundaries, I think of properties, I think of borders, I think of those kinds of things.
Right.
How do we relate all of that to marriage?
Well, you know, the truth is, in a relationship, persons come to the relationship as individuals. They have likes, they have dislikes, they have, you know, certain things that they enjoy. And the other person coming in would have to understand that and also sort of respect that. When we talk about boundaries, Doc, and, you know, just turn into a resource that we'll be using, and Doc, you will share that a little later. But when we speak about boundaries in the simplest terms, we are thinking of, as you mentioned, a property line, something that demarks, something that highlights where something begins and where something ends. And, you know, in the context of a relationship, that's something that we want to look at. You know, where does husband begin? Where does wife begin? Sort of where does wife end? Where does husband end in relationship to that simultaneous type of relationship?
That's very interesting. By the way, friends, we from time to time we will make a reference to some resources, and for this particular series, we find, you know, we will quote various authors, various authorities in marriage and family life education, but we find very useful for the topic of boundary Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend, so that from time to time, you will hear us make a reference to a statement that these gentlemen say, you know, we ought to give credit where credit is due, definitely.
Absolutely.
Now, Doc, you were developing a concept there about property lines.
Yes.
Now, I often hear that when people get married, they have all things in common.
Well.
But now we are saying that there ought to be boundaries in marriage. So we're saying that there's some things that the husband owns and there's some things that the wife owns. Now, we're not talking about material things here.
Correct.
It's important for us to make that distinction.
Very important. You know, not material things, not a car or a sofa, but we're really talking about some of the attitudes, emotions, and feelings within the context of a marriage, because these are things that, you know, a spouse will own in their marriage. A person will own certain attitudes or feelings. And so we need to understand, where does this begin for one person? Where does it end for another person? What are the demarking lines? How do we look at it? How do we relate to it in the context of a relationship? And is it important?
Now, let's talk about why this is so important. Because, you know, I may be upset, and I want to push that feeling on my spouse, or I may even blame my spouse by saying, you know, you make me upset.
Right.
But I have to own my feeling. I have to realize that this is my feeling and not my spouse's feeling.
That's right.
And I have to take responsibility. We're going to come back to that word maybe on our next program, but
yes.
I have to take responsibility for how I feel.
Yes.
That's something that I own. And so when we talk about property lines, there are some things that belong to you as husband. There are some things that belong to wife as wife. You know, your feelings, your emotions, they are yours. And you have to be willing to take responsibility for what is yours.
So I mean, it's your property, you know, if you want to put it that way, you know, that feeling of anger at the point that you're angry is yours. And there is a sort of a demarcation, a boundary, because you can't take it and place it on the other person, so to speak. You have to take responsibility for your own feeling at that point in time, as we use the example of anger. And, you know, where do you set that demarcation, Doc? You know, if the other person responds differently, how do you relate to that in relationship to how you are feeling at this point in time? There is a need for an individual, the spouse, to take responsibility for that feeling, for that attitude, whatever it is.
Definitely, and that is why we want to discuss this particular subject, because we have discovered, Doc, that many of the problems, many of the challenges in life come down to this basic idea of individuals not respecting one another's boundaries,
right,
and not understanding or giving ownership to the things that they should own. You know, we are marriage and family life educators.
Yes.
We do counseling, and individuals come into our offices from time to time. Yes. And, you know, sometimes a husband and a wife, and as you listen to them, they're blaming one another. You know, my wife is always upset, or my husband is always upset. And you ask, you know, what makes you so angry? What makes you upset? And you get the response, oh, it's my wife's fault, or it's my husband's fault. This matter of blame is really, in reality, a reaction to not wanting to own what is ours.
That's right. So you know, in essence, you know, when we talk about boundaries, we talk about responsibility. We are really talking about, you know, an individual taking responsibility for something. Who is responsible for this? And, you know, it also addresses, Doc, I think, the whole issue of maturity in a marriage. You know, the ability to take responsibility for something and to, as we would say, maybe own up to something. I think it's really critical and very important for couples in a relationship to come to the place where they can say, you know what, I can accept responsibility for this.
Now that, as you say, that is maturity.
That's maturity.
And everybody is not at the same place when it comes to maturity.
Absolutely.
You know, and neither do we want to say that it comes with age.
Right. There you go. I mean, the reality is, you know, a person can be up in age, if we want to put it that way, but not have the maturity that they need to have. You know, and so as the relationship progresses, you realize that there is a difference between the two individuals. And we're saying, you know, that along the journey of marriage, persons need to develop. I think that is critical. You know, you can't stay at the same place that you were 10 or 15 years ago. As you age, you should also increase in maturity. And I want to make a point because, you know, there was a couple that I spoke to recently, and they said something to me that just made my day. You know, they said that they are invested in their marriage. And this couple, relatively new couple, went and sought out some material and bought books, Doc, and they read together. And
that's really excellent.
I mean,
from time to time, we're going to be sharing resources that we can use. The matter of investment, I don't want to pick up on that because as we talk about maturity, you know, maturity doesn't happen overnight. People don't just become mature because they age. Right. I think that's the point I was making earlier. There are some individuals who may be in their 30s, in their 40s, but they behave like individuals in their teen years. If you do not make an effort to grow, to expand your knowledge base, to acquire wisdom, then maturity does not happen.
Right.
And unfortunately, Doc, in some marriages, the marriage does not grow.
That's right. That's right.
So they may be 5 years married, but it's 5 years living over the same first year,
issues,
which is not a good thing. So the matter of investing in your relationship, and as you mentioned with that couple, they're reading together,
Yes.
they're having fun activities together. These are some ways that you grow your relationship. Another good way to grow your relationship is for husband and wife to watch Marriage Encounter together.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
So definitely, you know, this is a part of the education process. Remember, folks, when a person or when a couple actually gets married, it is really the beginning of their lives together. You know, it is not the culmination of an experience together. It is the moment when you are going to spend time learning and growing, or ought to spend time learning and growing. And as you encounter challenges, it gives you now an opportunity to go and help yourselves by researching, by investing, by encouraging and developing skills, you know, that will help you along the journey of marriage. So one of those skills we're talking about, Doc, you know, as we relate to boundaries, is actually taking responsibility in areas of your own relationship.
Definitely. And I think a good illustration of individuals who fail to take responsibility is the experience of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden.
There you go.
You know, many of our viewers or listeners may be familiar with the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden when Satan tempted Eve.
Yes.
Now God had given them instructions that they should not eat of the fruit. They ate the fruit, they disobeyed God, they sinned, and they went to hide from God. The interesting thing is that when God came and asked Adam, where are you? You know, the response was, I'm hiding.
Yeah, right.
You know, but then God said, listen, that's strange. You don't normally hide from me. You normally come toward me. But, well, what's wrong? And Adam said, the woman that you gave me.
He blamed, right?
Right? So that's the blame.
That's
the
the blame.
woman that you gave me caused me to do wrong. And it didn't stop there, because God then turned to Eve and asked, well, Eve, explain yourself. What's wrong?
What's going on here? Yeah.
And Eve is saying, the serpent beguiled me. So that what we notice here is that they were not willing to take responsibility for their own actions. And if we put this back to marriage, we were talking about an individual who is angry, and what he normally says is, my wife made me do this, or make me react this way.
Yeah. And so, you know, again, you know, relating back to that story, Doc, the inability of human beings to take responsibility for their own actions is often a significant cause for the breakdown in relationships. And so, you know, at times, you know, boundaries have to be established that says that, hey, you know, this is really your responsibility. You're the one who may have made that mistake or done that thing. And as a mature individual, you have to come to the place where you're willing to take responsibility for that and not blame the other person. So, you know, it's a growth experience. As I mentioned earlier, it doesn't come overnight, you know. We don't get it right immediately. But as we grow and as we develop, this is an area that we can really establish in our relationships to help us.
And I want to relate this to boundaries, you know, so that we can see where it is. I'm talking about relating the story of Adam and Eve to boundaries. Now, Eve did something wrong. You know, the serpent spoke to her. God had given her instructions. But what she had was a choice. That's something that was hers. Right. She made a choice. And when she made that choice, Adam later also made a choice. When God spoke to Adam and asked Adam, what is it that you have done? Adam's response should have been, Lord, I made a foolish choice.
Right.
You know, but instead, you know, and if he had done that, he would have been saying, this is me. This is what I have done. I am responsible here. I am taking responsibility for my action. I should not have disobeyed you.
There you go.
Instead of taking ownership, he said, the woman that you gave me caused this to happen. And what we're saying here, as we discuss this matter of boundaries, we said earlier that a boundary is a property line. There are some things that you own. And you can't afford to disown them when things don't go right.
Yeah.
You are supposed to take care of your property. If a man comes into your house and breaks in and takes your goods, you don't make excuses like, well, you know, it wasn't my property. It's your property.
It's your property, right.
You take responsibility for it.
And truth be told, Doc, here, you know, when people get to the place where they can begin to take responsibility, they now find themselves in a position where they can make change, positive changes. You know, I take responsibility for my property. I am responsible for its security. You know, if somebody breaks into my house, I can now say, okay, I failed in this area of securing my property. I can now begin to put things in place to address that. But if I keep saying, you know, it's not my property, I'm paying the mortgage, but it's really the bank's property, you know what I mean? Then you're going to say, well, okay, you know, I'm not responsible for this. And people will keep breaking in. It's the same with a relationship. You recognize an area, you take responsibility for it, then you begin to address it. You know, from the moment that Adam and Eve, if they were to have taken responsibility for their actions, immediately then beginning to address the problem could have proceeded.
I like the illustration, Doc, because, you know, if I have a weakness,
yes.
Let's say I spend too much.
Yes.
You know, I'm not able to save. I'm always buying. I'm always shopping. And I blame that on my spouse. Then I won't ever be able to correct that. But when I realize, hey, that's me. That's my problem. That's my issue. How can I deal with that? Then it may occur to me that I need some help. I can say, well, let me get some help in this area. Or let me share with my spouse. Listen, I think I have a problem. How can you help me to deal with this? Because sometimes, even with our own property, we recognize a problem that we can't handle ourselves. And we may call a professional to do something. If you have a serious breakdown in your electrical appliance, you may not be able to fix that, but you can call an expert to come and fix it for you.
That's right. Perfect. So in the context of a relationship, there are areas in your relationship where you may struggle. And that's normal. It's human. We're not perfect. So that if you recognize, hey, you know, I have a problem with financing, I spend too much money, you may try some things, they may not work. You may want to call in a financial advisor who can come and sit down with you and help you to make some choices that may assist in improving your marriage. I think that one of the challenges, as we've been mentioning over and over again, is the fact that persons are not willing to take responsibility and to admit, you know, I'm not a great financier, I'm not a great communicator, I'm not really good at resolving conflicts, managing conflict. I need some help. And that's why when the person said that they bought a book, it really excited me because they were now assessing areas of the relationship where they needed some strengthening and were doing something about it.
I mean, some of us think that we know everything, but nobody in life knows everything.
Absolutely not.
I've had individuals who say to me, listen, I don't want anybody to come and tell me how to run my marriage, you know? Now, do you say that of your property?
Wow.
If your electrical appliance breaks down, do you say, I don't want anybody to come and tell me how to fix my refrigerator or how to deal with my washing machine?
Absolutely.
I'll do it myself? No. In reality, we all do need, on occasions, to deal with referring somebody or calling in somebody for help. Because there are those issues that are bigger than us.
That's correct. That's
most
correct.
definitely.
So it's about taking responsibility. It's about establishing, it's about boundaries and understanding, you know, this is my responsibility. I need to accept this and not cast the blame on somebody else. So critical, so important for the success of your relationship.
And in the few minutes that we have remaining, Doc, I'm using the illustration of a house. You know, in your house, you clean, you should clean, you know, you do basic maintenance from time to time. And if you do those things, maintenance, you'll have less repair to do. But even with maintenance, there are times when you have some repair to do.
Absolutely.
Occasionally, there are some big issues where you need help. You ought to be able to know, because this is my house, I'm going to take care of it. And as I take care of it on a day-by-day, a week-by-week, a year-by-year basis, occasionally there are things that will happen where you need to get outside help.
And again, you know, that's understanding a boundary. You know your limitation.
That's right.
I can't do this. I need some help in this area. You mentioned it, Dr. Greene. If there's an electrical problem in your house, maybe not an appliance, but there's a switch that's sparking, or you know, a light, you've changed the bulb, but the light still is not coming on. You do not have the expertise to rewire. You know, you probably shouldn't.
That's right.
Because you may end up burning down the house. And that's exactly what we're saying. Now you recognize your boundary, your limitation, you get some help.
That's right. Well, friends, we're going to pick it up from here on our next broadcast. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to write to us. We would like you to send us an email. It's carsongreene@yahoo.com or
LINC, that's LINC with link with a C, LINC2177@yahoo.com. LINC2177@yahoo.com.
So this is where we stay for today. We look forward to seeing you next week. We look forward to being in your company again. Remember, Marriage Encounter is here. We're going to be here with you every week. And until then, we say, God bless you so long. Tell a friend, Marriage Encounter is on. God bless.